Beijing, China, September 9th, 2025. On a clear morning in Beijing, the grandeur of the Great Hall of the People once again became the stage for international diplomacy. Chinese President Xi Jinping welcomed Portuguese Prime Minister Luis Montenegro in a meeting that highlighted not only the enduring friendship between China and Portugal, but also their shared aspirations in an increasingly uncertain world. The encounter, covered by the global press, underscored the intricate balance of geopolitics, economic cooperation and cultural diplomacy that defines the ties between the two nations. Prime Minister Luis Montenegro, arriving with a sense of purpose and carrying the weight of Lisbon's expectations, was greeted with the formalities that are a signature of Beijing's diplomatic style. The Portuguese leader walked into the hall with measured steps, exchanging courtesies before sitting down across from Xi Jinping, whose presence carried the mix of calm authority and strategic intent for which he is known. As cameras captured the opening moments, the Chinese leader wasted no time in setting the tone of the discussions. Looking directly at his counterpart, Xi Jinping began his remarks by expressing the value Beijing places on its relationship with Lisbon. Xi Jinping said, "China values its traditional friendship with Portugal and is ready to work together to deepen mutual trust, expand cooperation, and build a brighter future for both nations." His words were deliberate, framed in the broader narrative of China's expanding role in Europe. Xi's emphasis on mutual trust and a brighter future carried both symbolic and practical weight. For Beijing, Portugal is more than just a small European partner. It is a gateway to Europe's Atlantic edge, a country with historical ties to the global south and a member of the European Union whose cooperation strengthens China's reach. Xi continued with reflections on the long-standing ties between the two countries. Xi Jinping said, "Portugal was among the earliest Western countries to establish diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China." Over the years, our ties have stood the test of time and international changes. This reminder was not accidental. By invoking history, Xi linked today's cooperation to a legacy that Beijing believes should guide tomorrow's partnerships. The heart of the talks revolved around economic collaboration. China's global economic footprint continues to expand, while Portugal, facing domestic challenges and seeking renewed growth, sees China as both an opportunity and a strategic partner. Xi outlined Beijing's vision for practical cooperation. Xi Jinping said, "We hope to enhance collaboration in areas such as trade, investment, clean energy, and digital innovation." China welcomes Portugal's active participation in the Belt and Road Initiative. This was a clear invitation to Lisbon to align more closely with China's flagship global project. The Belt and Road Initiative, often met with caution in Western Europe, has nonetheless attracted countries seeking infrastructure investment and stronger commercial links. For Portugal, a maritime nation with deep shipping traditions, connectivity and trade offer tangible benefits. Xi also stressed resilience in global partnerships amid economic turbulence. Xi Jinping said, "In a world full of uncertainties, it is all the more important that China and Portugal stand together to promote open markets, sustainable development and win-win cooperation." Prime Minister Luis Montenegro responded warmly, acknowledging both the hospitality extended to him and the strategic value of the relationship. Leaning slightly forward, he emphasized Portugal's willingness to expand its role as a bridge between Europe and China. Luis Montenegro said, "Portugal appreciates China's long-standing friendship and respects the vision you have outlined for cooperation. We are committed to strengthening economic, cultural and political ties." For Montenegro, this visit was more than diplomatic protocol. At home, his government faces the challenge of stimulating growth, addressing unemployment, and managing fiscal responsibility. Strengthening ties with China, one of the world's largest economies, offers Lisbon opportunities to attract investment, open markets for Portuguese exports, and expand tourism flows. The Prime Minister was also keen to underscore Portugal's identity as a European Union member while balancing bilateral ties. Luis Montenegro said, "Portugal is ready to play a constructive role within the European Union to promote understanding between Europe and China." This statement highlighted Lisbon's dual approach, building bilateral goodwill with Beijing while signalling that Portugal's cooperation fits within broader EU-China relations. Beyond economics, both leaders spoke of the deeper connections between their peoples. Xi highlighted the centuries-old exchanges between China and Portugal, dating back to maritime exploration and the era of global navigation. Xi Jinping said, "The history of our exchanges is a valuable legacy. Today, it is our responsibility to transform this legacy into opportunities for cooperation in culture, education, and tourism." Montenegro echoed this sentiment, pointing to the value of cultural diplomacy. Luis Montenegro said, "Portugal believes cultural exchange is as important as trade or investment. We welcome more Chinese visitors to Portugal and more Portuguese students to China." Such remarks reflected a growing awareness that people-to-people ties often provide the most durable foundations for long-term partnerships. The discussions also touched on broader global issues. With conflicts raging in different regions and the global economy under pressure, both leaders emphasized cooperation as a path to stability. Xi, adopting a tone both firm and hopeful, outlined China's perspective. Xi Jinping said, "China and Portugal, though different in size and geography, share a common interest in peace, development, and international cooperation. Together, we can advocate for multilateralism and oppose unilateralism." Montenegro, in turn, reaffirmed Lisbon's support for dialogue and diplomacy. Luis Montenegro said, "Portugal will continue to support peaceful resolutions to conflicts and to work with China in international forums to advance common goals." Such exchanges, though formal, signalled a shared intent to position both nations as advocates of dialogue at a time of rising geopolitical divisions. While the statements were carefully crafted for public consumption, the symbolism of the encounter was as important as the content. The flags of China and Portugal, displayed prominently behind the two leaders, reflected the merging of two histories, one a vast Asian power, the other a European nation with global maritime heritage. The imagery of the meeting was broadcast internationally, sending a signal that Portugal, under Montenegro, is not afraid to engage Beijing directly and positively. For China, hosting a European leader amid wider tensions with the West reinforced its narrative that Europe is not monolithic in its approach to Beijing. This meeting took place against a backdrop of shifting alliances. Europe's relationship with China has been marked by both cooperation and caution. While some European states take a harder line on Beijing, others, like Portugal, favour pragmatic engagement. Lisbon's geographic position, historical ties with Africa and Latin America, and membership in both the EU and NATO give it a unique vantage point. For Beijing, cultivating Portugal offers a way to diversify its relationships within Europe and counterbalance scepticism from larger EU powers. At the same time, Portugal's interest in Chinese investment, whether in renewable energy, infrastructure or technology, makes cooperation attractive. For Montenegro, the challenge will be balancing this with commitments to European unity and transatlantic relations. As the meeting drew to a close, both leaders reaffirmed their commitments in clear and concise terms. Xi Jinping said, "Let us continue to work hand in hand to open new chapters in the partnership between China and Portugal." Montenegro echoed the sentiment with equal clarity. Luis Montenegro said, "Portugal looks forward to turning today's dialogue into concrete results that benefit our peoples." The two leaders then rose, exchanged a firm handshake and posed for the cameras, a gesture meant to capture not just the conclusion of talks, but the continuation of a relationship rooted in history and looking toward the future. The Beijing meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Portuguese Prime Minister Luis Montenegro was more than a routine diplomatic exchange. It was a calculated reaffirmation of friendship, a strategic conversation about economic cooperation, and a symbolic gesture of unity in a fractured global landscape. With words carefully chosen, both leaders projected a narrative of partnership, resilience, and mutual respect. Xi's emphasis on trust and Montenegro's acknowledgement of Portugal's role within Europe underscored the delicate balance each leader seeks to maintain. Ultimately, the meeting reflected the reality of today's world, nations large and small seeking to navigate uncertainty through dialogue, cooperation, and a shared vision of peace.
两国人民都拥有开放包容、致力。3位前总理转达我对德索萨总统的称，当前世界百年变局加速演进，中方愿进步做出更大贡献。
Visita e que nos encontramos. Como o Sr. Presidente afirmou, Portugal, que partilharam com vários momentos em comum. Recordo bem a visita do Sr. Presidente a Portugal há 7 anos atrás. Dizer-lhe que, como o Sr. Presidente mencionou, tivemos na transição a região administrativa especial de Macau com Portugal e com a nível da nossa cooperação económica bilateral. É meu dever.